Imagine a symbol that embodies centuries of history, authority, and trust. A symbol so powerful that its very presence commands respect across nations. Now, imagine someone who once lived within the royal family, using that symbol in ways the monarchy never authorized. Shocking, isn't it? Could it really happen? Could Meghan Markle, a figure adored by millions and scrutinized by billions, have used the royal family's official crest in global business deals without permission? Today, we are diving deep into allegations that have rocked both the royal world and international business circles. But before we continue, please subscribe and turn on the notification bell for updates. For decades, the royal seal has represented more than a mere emblem. It is a visual representation of monarchy, a guarantee of authenticity, and a symbol of centuries-old traditions. The seal is more than decorative. It's a legal and cultural instrument. Any misuse of it is not just a breach of etiquette. It can be seen as a direct attack on the credibility and authority of the entire institution. To think that someone could allegedly use a variation of that symbol to secure multi-million-dollar deals is astonishing. And yet, this is precisely what investigators claim has happened. But let's step back. After stepping down from official royal duties, Meghan Markle ventured into a world few members of the monarchy have fully navigated: international business. She moved seamlessly from Hollywood into entrepreneurship, building a network of partnerships, public appearances, and brand collaborations. From mental health initiatives to streaming deals and private companies, her reach became global. Yet, amid this expansion, questions began to emerge about whether certain boundaries were being crossed. Specifically, the use of a symbol that was never hers to claim. The first whispers came quietly. Observers noted small anomalies. Documents bearing a symbol that looked strikingly like the royal seal. Communications that suggested a level of royal authority she no longer possessed. Initially, these were dismissed as minor oversights, harmless embellishments meant to lend gravitas. But as more documents surfaced, a troubling pattern emerged. Allegedly, Meghan used a modified version of the royal seal to gain credibility in international contracts, implying she had the backing or authority of the monarchy. And according to authorities, this qualifies as unauthorized representation of the royal family. What does this mean legally? What does it mean socially, culturally, and personally? These are not just questions for lawyers. They are questions for a global audience watching every move, every misstep, every revelation. The alleged actions, if proven, straddle a line between clever business maneuvering and outright violation of trust. When you consider the enormous sums involved, multi-million-dollar international deals, the stakes become staggering. Every deal, every signature, every email could now be scrutinized under the harsh light of public and legal examination. Yet, even as the allegations swirl, Meghan's public persona remains carefully curated. On one hand, she is a former duchess, a woman who married into royalty and then chose to step back from royal duties. On the other hand, she is a global influencer, a businesswoman, and a media figure with immense cultural reach. This duality creates a paradox. She no longer holds the authority of the monarchy, yet the perception of that authority seems to linger. And in business, perception can be everything. But where perception ends and misrepresentation begins is precisely where investigators say she may have crossed the line. To understand the magnitude of these allegations, consider the royal seal itself. Its origins date back centuries. It has been used by kings and queens, princes and prime ministers, to signify legitimacy and endorsement. Using it without authorization is not a minor infraction. It is akin to impersonating centuries of royal authority. And yet, the claim is not that Meghan blatantly forged it, but that she used a variation of it. A subtle tweak, a small alteration. The kind of detail that could easily slip past casual observers, but not the trained eyes of investigators. And here's where it gets even more compelling. The contracts in question are not small-scale deals. We are talking about international agreements with companies and organizations spanning multiple countries, each valued at millions of dollars. The implication is clear. If a party believes it is dealing with someone backed by royal authority, their willingness to engage and their perception of risk changes dramatically. From a business perspective, the royal seal is a seal of trust. To allegedly use it without permission is to wield immense influence, but also to risk enormous consequences. But what truly sets this story apart is not just the legal or financial dimension, it's the emotional one. Meghan Markle has always been a polarizing figure. Loved by some, criticized by others, her every move is dissected under the microscope of public scrutiny. These allegations tap directly into that tension. They raise questions about integrity, privilege, and responsibility. Can someone who steps away from the monarchy still claim the aura, the authority, or even the symbols of that institution? And if so, at what cost? To themselves, to the monarchy, and to the public trust? Now, let's pause for a moment and consider the human element. Behind the documents, the seals, and the contracts, there is a story of ambition, transition, and identity. Meghan's journey from Hollywood to the royal family, and then to global entrepreneurship, is one of immense visibility and scrutiny. Every decision, every move is not just a business or legal choice. It is also a deeply personal one, affecting her relationships, her reputation, and her legacy. And in this story, every document tells a piece of that narrative, whether it is about ambition, misunderstanding, or something more calculated. Yet, even as investigators piece together the alleged misuses, questions remain. Was this a deliberate act, a calculated business strategy exploiting residual royal authority? Or was it a misunderstanding, a blurred line between representation and personal branding? The documents themselves may tell one story, while intentions tell another. And in the world of high-stakes international business, the difference between interpretation and violation can be razor-thin. Each page, each signature, each seal could hold clues that determine not only legal outcomes, but also public perception and historical judgment. And here's a twist that will make you rethink everything you thought you knew. Some insiders suggest that these alleged deals involved not just private companies, but entities that operate in politically sensitive regions. The stakes are not just financial, they are geopolitical. The influence of the royal seal, real or implied, can sway negotiations, lend credibility, and shape outcomes. To allegedly wield that influence without authorization is to walk a tightrope over multiple realms: legal, ethical, financial, and diplomatic. The consequences, if substantiated, could reverberate far beyond Meghan herself. But even as this storm brews, Meghan has remained publicly composed. Her appearances, statements, and media engagements continue to present her as confident, poised, and in control. Yet the contrast between public image and private allegations creates tension. The very people who once celebrated her as a member of the royal family now watch closely, waiting for answers, explanations, or denials. The curiosity is palpable: what is true, what is embellished, and what remains hidden. As we prepare to explore the evidence, the history, the reactions, and the legal implications, keep this in mind. What may appear as a simple misuse of a symbol is actually a window into power, perception, and privilege. Every choice she allegedly made has ripple effects, not just for Meghan, not just for the monarchy, but for every party involved in these complex international transactions. And as we peel back the layers, each revelation becomes more shocking, each twist more unexpected. So, as we dive into this story, ask yourself, could a single symbol, altered or not, really carry this much weight? Could it influence millions of dollars, shape perceptions across continents, and now draw the scrutiny of authorities? And, perhaps most importantly, what comes next for Meghan Markle, and for the monarchy itself? But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. Imagine holding in your hands a symbol that has survived centuries of war, political upheaval, and dynastic change. A mark so powerful that it doesn't just represent authority, it is authority. The royal seal is more than a decorative emblem. It is the embodiment of legitimacy, tradition, and trust, carried through generations of monarchs. To the untrained eye, it might look like an intricate design of crowns, lions, or heraldic devices. But in the eyes of the world, it is a badge of authenticity, a visual guarantee that what it accompanies is sanctioned by centuries of established power. And now, according to shocking allegations, Meghan Markle may have used a variation of that symbol in ways the monarchy never approved. But why does a symbol matter so much? Why would a seal, essentially an image, carry weight that can influence international contracts worth millions. To understand that, you need to understand what the royal seal represents. It is not merely ornamental. It is a legal instrument, a cultural cornerstone, and a global signifier of trust. Historically, no king or queen would allow it to be reproduced or used without explicit authorization. Its presence on a document or agreement conveys an unspoken endorsement. It signals to everyone reading it that this agreement carries the full weight of the monarchy's authority. Misuse of that seal isn't just a breach of etiquette. It is a direct challenge to centuries of legitimacy. Consider for a moment the kinds of documents that traditionally bear the royal seal: royal charters, official treaties, high-level appointments, and significant government communications. Every letter, every stamp, every imprint has been scrutinized, regulated, and historically protected. Any deviation, any unauthorized replication, is treated as a serious offense. There are precedents in history where misuse of royal symbols led to scandals, financial penalties, and even imprisonment. The symbol itself has been carefully guarded because its power depends on perception. Once the integrity of the seal is compromised, so too is the authority it represents. Now imagine that same seal, or a carefully modified version of it, appearing on contracts signed by someone no longer holding royal office. That is the crux of the allegations facing Meghan Markle. Authorities claim that she used a variation of the royal seal to lend legitimacy to international business deals. Documents suggest that in some contracts, the seal was not exact, but close enough that recipients might reasonably assume royal endorsement. In legal and cultural terms, this is a gray area fraught with risk. Even subtle alterations cannot fully mitigate the appearance of unauthorized representation. The symbolism runs deeper than just legality. To the public, the royal seal is almost sacred. It evokes continuity, trust, and stability. Misuse of that symbol, especially by someone who once held a high-profile royal title, carries an emotional weight that goes beyond money or contracts. People react viscerally because it challenges their understanding of monarchy, hierarchy, and trust. And this is compounded by Meghan's unique position. She is not only a former duchess, but also a global celebrity whose every action is scrutinized. The allegation that she may have used a symbol of centuries-old authority in private business deals triggers both curiosity and outrage on a scale few other scenarios could. But how could this happen in practice? The documents reportedly show that Meghan employed a version of the seal that appeared highly similar to the official royal seal. Perhaps it was stylized differently, perhaps certain elements were adjusted, but the overall impression was unmistakable. Imagine receiving a multi-million-dollar contract, seeing the seal, and assuming that it came with royal endorsement. How would you feel? Confident? Reassured? Perhaps even more willing to enter into a complex financial arrangement? That is exactly why investigators are treating these allegations so seriously. The seal is not merely symbolic. It can materially affect perception and decision-making. Historically, the monarchy has been protective of such symbols. Past incidents illustrate the seriousness with which misuse has been treated. In the 19th century, an unauthorized use of a royal emblem in international trade resulted in criminal charges and diplomatic disputes. Another case in the mid-20th century involved a private businessman claiming indirect royal approval for a deal, which later unraveled and led to legal penalties. These examples underscore the broader context. Symbols of authority, when misused, can have consequences far beyond the individuals involved. They can impact international relations, corporate trust, and the very reputation of the monarchy itself. And this is where Meghan's alleged actions intersect with history in a dramatic way. According to sources, the deals in question were not minor side projects. They involved significant sums, multiple countries, and partners who would have assumed a level of legitimacy due to the implied royal endorsement. This is not about a casual oversight. It is about influence, perception, and power. The use of a symbol that historically carries authority could alter the trajectory of negotiations, sway decisions, and even shape contractual obligations. The emotional dimension of this story is also worth exploring. The royal seal is more than just a legal tool. It is a cultural icon. It embodies loyalty, heritage, and identity. Alleged misuse by a former duchess creates a tension between public expectation and private behavior. For admirers of the monarchy, this can feel like a betrayal. For critics of Meghan, it may reinforce negative perceptions. And for the monarchy itself, it represents a challenge to control over its own symbols and the narratives attached to them. But the intrigue does not stop there. Sources indicate that Meghan may have believed she was entitled to use a version of the seal, citing her former title and status within the royal family. If true, this introduces a fascinating psychological and legal layer. Was this a misunderstanding, a genuine belief in entitlement, or a calculated decision to leverage residual royal authority? The documents and communications under investigation aim to answer this, and each revelation has the potential to shift the story dramatically. Think also about the perception in the international business community. Contracts, endorsements, and agreements are often influenced by status, reputation, and perceived authority. The royal seal is not merely ornamental in these contexts. It signals reliability, gravitas, and implicit backing. Whether Meghan intended to mislead or not, the effect on counterparties is the same. They may have acted under the assumption that they were engaging with someone who carried the endorsement of the British monarchy, which in financial and strategic terms is extraordinarily valuable. And there is yet another dimension, the subtlety of using a variation rather than the exact seal. This is not a crude forgery. It is a strategic ambiguity. Slight modifications can create plausible deniability while maintaining the appearance of authority. For investigators, this makes the case particularly compelling, as it raises questions about intent, awareness, and ethical boundaries. The stakes are high not just legally but morally, culturally, and emotionally. The tension escalates further when considering the consequences. Unauthorized use of royal symbols can lead to financial penalties, legal action, and irrevocable damage to reputation. For Meghan, whose public image is already under intense scrutiny, the implications are enormous. Every document, every signature, every communication can now be dissected under a microscope. Allies and adversaries alike will interpret her actions in the most consequential ways. Even the slightest misstep could be amplified across global media, social platforms, and international forums. Yet, despite the gravity of the allegations, Meghan has maintained a composed public demeanor. She continues her ventures, media appearances, and philanthropic efforts. But the contrast between her public image and the private allegations adds to the suspense. The world is watching, questioning, and speculating. What really happened? Was it deliberate, accidental, or somewhere in between? Each detail matters, and each revelation can shift public perception dramatically. As we begin to examine the evidence in the coming chapters, keep this in mind. The royal seal is more than a mark. It is a narrative. Every curve, every lion, every crown tells a story of authority, trust, and tradition. Alleged misuse by someone who once lived within the royal circle transforms the story into a drama of power, perception, and responsibility. And while history may provide context, the modern stakes, financial, legal, and personal, are unprecedented. But what comes next in this unfolding saga is even more astonishing. The documents, the insider accounts, and the alleged deals reveal layers of complexity that few could have predicted. And as we will see, the use of a symbol, so carefully guarded for centuries, has triggered a chain reaction that could change everything for Meghan Markle, the monarchy, and everyone watching this drama unfold. What no one expected, however, is how far the influence of a single emblem could reach, and how deeply it could entangle someone who once held the world's admiration. But the real shock is still coming, and it will challenge everything we thought we knew about authority, entitlement, and ambition. From Hollywood lights to royal palaces, Meghan Markle's journey has always been extraordinary. But after stepping back from royal duties, she embarked on perhaps her most ambitious venture yet, building a global business empire. What many saw as a seamless transition from duchess to entrepreneur was, in reality, a high-stakes balancing act, combining personal branding, media influence, and strategic partnerships. And it is within this empire that the allegations of using a variation of the royal seal allegedly come to life. Let's start at the beginning. Meghan's post-royal business ventures span multiple industries. She co-founded media companies, invested in production ventures, partnered with streaming platforms, and launched wellness and lifestyle initiatives. Each project carried her signature brand, a combination of sophistication, global appeal, and a connection to her royal past. But as her reach expanded, so did the complexity of her operations. International contracts, cross-border partnerships, and corporate negotiations became routine. And with that complexity came both opportunity and risk. The allure of Meghan's brand is undeniable. Her royal connections, celebrity status, and media influence made her an attractive partner for businesses worldwide. Companies wanted to associate with her not just for marketing purposes, but for credibility and status. The implication of a former duchess endorsing or participating in a project could elevate its profile exponentially. This is why the alleged use of a symbol resembling the royal seal matters so much. In global business, perception can be as powerful as reality. If a company believes it is engaging with someone who retains royal authority or prestige, the value of that connection can influence decisions worth millions. Consider some of her notable ventures. She partnered with production companies to create original content, leveraging both her storytelling skills and public persona. She launched initiatives focused on mental health, education, and empowerment, which attracted corporate sponsors and international collaborations. Even subtle associations with her royal background could enhance legitimacy, drawing attention from media, investors, and partners. Every public appearance, social media post, and announcement was carefully orchestrated to align with her brand strategy. Yet behind this polished exterior, the empire was expanding rapidly, and with rapid expansion comes vulnerability. International contracts are complex, often involving legal nuances, intellectual property rights, and compliance with both local and international regulations. For someone like Meghan, whose identity straddled royalty and celebrity, navigating these agreements required precision. Allegedly, in some of these contracts, she utilized a variation of the royal seal, implying authority she no longer formally possessed. Even if the intent was to lend credibility, it is easy to see how investigators might view it as unauthorized representation. The stakes of these contracts are enormous. Reports indicate that some deals involved multi-million-dollar sums, spanning media rights, endorsements, and production budgets. For counterparties, the perception of royal backing could have influenced both negotiation terms and willingness to participate. The royal seal, even in altered form, carries centuries of implicit authority. Using it, knowingly or not, could sway decisions and alter outcomes. That influence is precisely what authorities are now scrutinizing. It's also worth noting that Meghan's empire was not just about financial gain. It was about shaping narratives. Through her businesses, she has been able to amplify causes, reach global audiences, and maintain a degree of independence from traditional media outlets. In this sense, her entrepreneurial ventures serve both as revenue streams and as platforms for influence. But with that influence comes responsibility. The allegations suggest that the blending of personal brand and perceived royal authority may have crossed a line, creating legal and ethical dilemmas. Interestingly, insiders say that Meghan's approach to business was methodical and meticulous. Contracts were carefully reviewed, partnerships strategically chosen, and brand messaging precisely crafted. If the use of the seal was intentional, it would suggest a calculated decision to leverage residual royal influence. If unintentional, it raises questions about oversight, understanding of legal boundaries, and the complex interplay between image and authority. Either way, the consequences could be far-reaching. Another dimension of Meghan's business empire is its global scope. Unlike local ventures, international deals involve multiple jurisdictions, each with its own legal standards and expectations regarding representation, authority, and intellectual property. Using a symbol associated with the monarchy in a country that respects and recognizes its authority could create complications. Authorities in multiple regions could interpret the use differently, potentially triggering legal investigations across borders. The ripple effect is staggering. Yet the story is not just about legality. It is about optics, influence, and cultural perception. In business, symbols are powerful. They convey trust, status, and legitimacy. The royal seal, even as a variation, carries an aura that few other emblems can match. When combined with Meghan's personal brand, the effect could be magnified exponentially. For international partners, the appearance of royal endorsement could influence risk assessments, financial projections, and long-term commitments. And that is precisely why investigators are taking these allegations so seriously. At the same time, Meghan's empire has faced skepticism and scrutiny. Critics argue that her ventures leverage her royal background excessively, blurring the lines between personal ambition and inherited authority. Supporters counter that she is merely building a platform for her voice, causes, and creative work. But the allegations regarding the seal introduce a new layer of controversy. It is no longer just about branding or public perception. It is about whether a symbol with centuries of legal and cultural weight was used without authorization. And yet, for all the controversy, Meghan's influence remains undeniable. Her ventures continue to attract attention, media coverage, and public interest. Companies seek partnerships, audiences engage with her projects, and investors watch closely. The empire she has built is resilient, sophisticated, and multifaceted. But with resilience comes vulnerability. The legal scrutiny surrounding the alleged use of the royal seal represents a potential crack in that empire, one that could have cascading consequences if substantiated. What adds intrigue to this story is the way Meghan's empire intersects with her personal narrative. Her transition from actress to duchess, and then to independent entrepreneur, has been watched closely by both media and public. Every move is dissected for symbolism, strategy, and intent. The alleged misuse of a royal symbol in international contracts ties directly into this narrative, creating a tension between independence and residual authority. It asks difficult questions. Can one leverage the prestige of a former role without overstepping boundaries? Where is the line between perception and misrepresentation? The emotional stakes are significant. For Meghan, this is not just about potential legal implications. It is about reputation, legacy, and control over her narrative. For the monarchy, it is about safeguarding symbols that have endured for centuries. And for the global audience, it is about witnessing a story where ambition, power, and tradition collide in unexpected ways. The tension between public image and private action creates a suspenseful backdrop, setting the stage for the revelations to come. As we move forward, we will examine the specific deals that have drawn scrutiny, the nature of the alleged misuse, and the potential ramifications for all parties involved. What initially seemed like a straightforward story of entrepreneurship has evolved into a complex drama, blending law, culture, and personal ambition. The empire Meghan built is both a testament to her ingenuity and a stage for allegations that could redefine her legacy. And just when it seemed that the stakes could not get any higher, a series of internal documents emerged, hinting at actions and decisions that could alter everything we thought we knew about the interplay between Meghan's personal brand and royal symbolism. But what came next would change the story completely, and no one saw it coming. The moment the allegations first surfaced, the world paused. Reports began to circulate that Meghan Markle, the former Duchess of Sussex, had allegedly signed multi-million-dollar contracts using a variation of the royal seal, claiming she was entitled to it as a former member of the royal family. At first, it seemed almost unbelievable. Could someone truly leverage royal symbolism in international business deals without repercussions? And yet, the documents, leaked, analyzed, and confirmed by multiple sources, paint a story that is both shocking and complex. To understand the gravity of these allegations, we need to examine the deals themselves. According to investigative reports, several contracts involved international partners spanning media, technology, and wellness industries. Each contract carried clauses of confidentiality, intellectual property rights, and significant financial commitments. The alleged use of the seal was subtle, yet unmistakable. Sources claim that in some instances, the symbol appeared on official letterheads or email footers, giving the impression of royal sanction. In business, perception is often as valuable as actual authority. The royal seal is a signal of trust, tradition, and legitimacy. If counterparties believe they were dealing with someone representing or endorsed by the monarchy, the terms, confidence, and outcomes of these deals could be drastically altered. One of the first deals to come under scrutiny reportedly involved a partnership with a European media company seeking to develop original content. The contract included a clause describing collaboration with a royally affiliated entity, a term investigators now believe was intentionally vague. The symbol accompanying the documentation bore a striking resemblance to the royal seal, though with subtle modifications, an altered crown, slight repositioning of heraldic lions. To an untrained eye, it would appear legitimate. To a trained investigator, it raised immediate questions. Did Meghan intend to mislead? Or did she genuinely believe her former title gave her the right to use a symbol reminiscent of royal authority? Another deal involved a wellness-focused initiative in North America, partnering with a conglomerate that specializes in lifestyle branding. Emails suggest that Meghan referenced her former Duchess title when negotiating terms, while including documents with the modified seal. The effect, insiders say, was powerful. The partners perceived a connection to the monarchy, which likely influenced their willingness to invest and collaborate. Here again, the alleged use of royal symbolism may have shifted negotiations in her favor, though whether this constitutes deliberate misrepresentation is precisely what authorities are investigating. What makes these allegations particularly fascinating is the subtlety involved. Unlike overt fraud, these actions, if true, relied on implied authority rather than explicit statements. The documents did not claim that Meghan was acting on behalf of the monarchy. Instead, the presence of the seal created an implicit association. In the complex world of international business, implicit signals are often more persuasive than written guarantees. This raises difficult questions. Can the mere suggestion of royal authority constitute unauthorized representation? And how do investigators prove intent when ambiguity is built into the design? Insider accounts provide further insight. Sources close to Meghan describe her as highly meticulous and brand-conscious, someone who understands the value of symbols, images, and perception. If these allegations are accurate, it would suggest a calculated decision to leverage the prestige of the royal seal without overtly claiming it as her own. Whether this crosses a legal or ethical boundary is now the central question for authorities and for public opinion. Financially, the stakes were enormous. Reports indicate that the deals in question totaled millions of dollars. Contracts included production budgets, investment commitments, and partnership agreements that would have required extensive negotiations. For counterparties, the perceived royal association may have influenced risk assessments and financial projections. In business, perception is often the most valuable currency, and the alleged use of the seal could have materially affected outcomes. The international dimension adds another layer of complexity. Different jurisdictions have varying laws regarding misrepresentation, intellectual property, and unauthorized use of symbols. In some countries, using an emblem resembling the royal seal without authorization can trigger severe penalties, including fines or legal action. In others, it may fall into a legal gray area, complicating enforcement. Investigators are therefore examining every contract, email, and signature with painstaking attention to detail, seeking evidence that crosses both legal and ethical boundaries. Beyond the legal and financial implications, there is a powerful cultural and emotional component. The royal seal is not merely a legal instrument. It is a symbol of continuity, stability, and public trust. Alleged misuse by a former duchess amplifies the emotional stakes. For the monarchy, it challenges centuries of tradition. For the public, it raises questions about privilege, entitlement, and accountability. And for Meghan, it introduces a tension between personal ambition and inherited authority that few could navigate without scrutiny. Some insiders have suggested that the deals were negotiated with the assumption that Meghan retained some informal influence within royal circles. If true, this blurs the line between perception and misrepresentation even further. Was she capitalizing on a lingering reputation? Or did she truly believe her former role conferred ongoing authority? These are questions that go beyond contracts and symbols. They touch on psychology, identity, and the complex interplay between personal branding and institutional power. One particularly intriguing aspect is the variation in the seal itself. Investigators point out that it was not an exact copy of the royal seal, but rather a modified version, a nuance that is both subtle and significant. By altering certain elements, the symbol maintained the aura of royal authority while creating a layer of plausible deniability. In legal terms, this makes the case more nuanced. In cultural terms, it makes the allegation even more provocative, as it suggests an awareness of boundaries and a strategic approach to bending them. Public reaction to these revelations has been swift and polarized. Social media erupted with speculation, legal experts weighed in on potential consequences, and media outlets dissected every available detail. Critics argue that leveraging royal symbolism for private gain is ethically dubious, if not legally precarious. Supporters contend that Meghan's ventures are simply an extension of her personal brand, and that any use of symbols was inadvertent or symbolic rather than deceptive. The tension between these perspectives fuels an ongoing narrative of controversy, curiosity, and suspense. The most significant aspect, however, may not be the deals themselves, but what they reveal about power, perception, and privilege. A symbol, centuries in the making, has the ability to influence millions of dollars, international relationships, and reputations across the globe. Allegedly using that symbol, even in modified form, is not just a business decision. It is a dramatic act that intersects with history, law, and public perception. And this is precisely why authorities, historians, and the public are paying such close attention. But the story grows even more complicated. Sources hint at additional contracts, communications, and internal memos that have yet to be disclosed publicly. If these materials confirm the pattern, the implications could be monumental. Not just for Meghan Markle, but for the global partners who engaged with her, and for the monarchy itself. What began as a story of ambition and branding now has the potential to escalate into a full-blown controversy that touches legal, financial, and cultural domains simultaneously. And just when it seemed the scope of the deals had been understood, insiders revealed a twist. One contract involved a partner with significant political and financial influence, raising the stakes even higher. This is not merely about private business ventures. It is about perception, authority, and the potential ripple effects across nations and industries. The royal seal, even in altered form, is at the center of this storm, and the consequences could extend far beyond what anyone imagined. But what came next would deepen the mystery, and the emerging evidence would leave both supporters and critics stunned. The documents, emails, and memos contain details that could reshape the narrative entirely. And no one saw it coming. In any story involving power, prestige, and controversy, the whispers behind closed doors are often more revealing than the headlines themselves. With Meghan Markle's alleged use of a variation of the royal seal in international business deals, insiders have become the most compelling sources of information. These are the people who were present, who saw the documents, who attended the meetings, and who can shed light on what really transpired. Their accounts are both illuminating and shocking, and they add layers of complexity that the public narrative alone cannot capture. The first whispers began quietly, from individuals who were directly involved in negotiations with Meghan's teams. Some described seeing documents with a seal that looked remarkably like the official royal seal, albeit with subtle modifications. Others noted references to her former Duchess title during meetings, creating an impression of endorsement or authority that was not formally granted by the monarchy. Even among experienced business professionals, the effect was notable. The combination of her persona, her previous royal association, and the symbol lent an extraordinary credibility to her proposals. One insider, speaking on condition of anonymity, revealed that during a contract negotiation, Meghan's representatives presented a folder containing the emblem. It was just enough to suggest authority, the insider said. We didn't question it at the time because her reputation and the perceived royal connection gave everything weight. Looking back, it feels different, almost like it was designed to sway us. The nuance here is critical. The seal was not blatant forgery, but it carried an implicit power that is difficult to overstate. It is precisely this subtlety that investigators are examining. Other insiders report that the influence of the alleged seal extended beyond documentation. Emails and communications accompanying contracts often referenced her royal title or her association with charitable initiatives linked to the monarchy. While not overt claims of endorsement, the implication was clear to recipients. In business, perception is reality, and in these cases, the perception may have been influenced heavily by her former role combined with the symbolic power of the seal. Leaked communications further intensify the intrigue. Some messages suggest that Meghan's team was aware of the symbol's potential impact, discussing internally how it might bolster credibility without explicitly claiming royal backing. This introduces questions of intent. Was this a calculated decision, a strategic use of residual influence, or merely an oversight? The answers to these questions could determine whether the actions are considered ethical, legal, or something in between. One particularly telling insider account involves a high-level meeting with a European media company. According to the source, Meghan's representatives presented a contract with a seal variation, and one of the executives asked quietly whether this implied official royal endorsement. The response, according to the insider, was deliberately ambiguous. No explicit claim was made, yet the impression remained. In retrospect, the insider described the moment as carefully orchestrated, adding a sense of calculated influence that investigators are likely to probe further. Whistleblowers within her organization have also added to the narrative. Some employees allegedly expressed concern about using the symbol in external communications, noting the potential legal and reputational risks. Memos reportedly circulated internally discussing whether referencing her former royal title or using emblematic symbols could be interpreted as misrepresentation. While it is unclear how these warnings were addressed, their existence suggests that the potential implications were known, at least within some parts of her team. Media leaks have amplified the story exponentially. Journalists with access to contracts, emails, and correspondence have highlighted inconsistencies, subtle modifications of the seal, and references to royal status. Each leak adds to the public perception of a carefully constructed narrative that blurs the lines between personal branding and royal association. For the audience, these leaks provide a behind-the-scenes view that is both tantalizing and troubling, creating suspense and curiosity about what may still be undisclosed. The timing of the leaks is also notable. Many occurred around key business announcements, media appearances, or legal milestones. This has led to speculation about whether the leaks were strategic, intended to influence public perception, or simply the result of insiders seeking to protect themselves or highlight potential wrongdoing. Either way, they have dramatically shaped the narrative and intensified scrutiny of Meghan's actions. Importantly, these insider accounts reveal a pattern of subtle influence rather than overt fraud. The alleged use of the seal, the strategic references to her title, and the carefully crafted communications all suggest an understanding of how perception can shape outcomes. This raises questions about accountability and intent. If the effect of an action is misrepresentation, does it matter whether the intent was malicious, negligent, or simply ambitious? Investigators are now exploring these nuances in depth, and the answers will likely be pivotal in determining the outcome. Legal analysts reviewing the insider accounts note the potential implications of implied authority. Even if no explicit claim of royal endorsement was made, the combination of symbolic representation and contextual cues can constitute unauthorized representation under certain jurisdictions. The fact that insiders were aware of the symbol's impact adds weight to the argument that its use was deliberate, or at least that potential risks were foreseeable. The human element cannot be ignored. Insiders describe a mix of admiration, caution, and unease. Some admired Meghan's ability to navigate complex negotiations and influence decisions. Others felt uncomfortable with the potential ethical and legal gray areas. This duality mirrors the broader public reaction. Fascination intertwined with skepticism. The insider perspective adds depth to the narrative, showing that the alleged actions are not simply black and white, but involve a complex interplay of strategy, perception, and ambition. Among the most compelling insider revelations is the suggestion that certain partners may have acted differently had they known the seal was not officially sanctioned. In business, perception of authority can materially affect negotiations, risk assessment, and willingness to commit resources. If the alleged variation of the royal seal influenced decisions, even subtly, it may have shaped outcomes worth millions of dollars. This is the very reason why authorities are now scrutinizing every document, communication, and signature associated with these deals. And yet, For all the insider revelations, much remains unknown. The full scope of contracts, the exact nature of communications, and the intentions behind the use of the seal are still being pieced together. Each leak, each account, each memo provides pieces of a puzzle that is far from complete. The suspense continues to build as investigators, journalists, and the public wait for the next disclosure, the next confirmation, or the next contradiction. Perhaps the most chilling insight from insiders is the scale of influence the symbol allegedly carried. It wasn't just about documents or emails. It was about shaping perception at a global level. International partners, executives, and organizations reportedly responded to the presence of the seal in ways that subtly shifted negotiations, decisions, and strategies. The implication is staggering. A single emblem, even altered, may have altered the course of multi-million-dollar deals and international collaborations. And just when it seemed that the insider revelations had told the full story, another leak emerged. A series of internal emails suggesting discussions about potential legal exposure, risk mitigation, and contingency plans. The correspondence implies that Meghan's team was at least aware of the potential ramifications, adding a new dimension to the ongoing investigation. The narrative is no longer just about symbolism. It is about strategy, awareness, and consequences. But the story does not end here. The leaks, the insider accounts, and the emerging evidence point toward an even larger picture, one that involves not only business deals, but potential legal scrutiny, public perception, and a profound challenge to the integrity of a centuries-old institution. And as we will see in the next chapter, the legal implications of these insider revelations may be far more serious than anyone anticipated. When allegations of unauthorized use of the royal seal surface, the conversation inevitably turns to the law. What exactly constitutes misuse of a symbol associated with the monarchy? And in Meghan Markle's case, how do international contracts, modifications to the seal, and implied authority intersect with legal boundaries? The answers are complex, often nuanced, and fraught with precedent, and the stakes could not be higher. At its core, the law distinguishes between outright forgery, misrepresentation, and unauthorized representation. Forgery involves the intentional creation of a false document or symbol to deceive. Misrepresentation can be either innocent or deliberate, and it occurs when a party gives a false impression that influences another party's actions. Unauthorized representation, particularly in the case of symbols associated with government or monarchy, refers to any action that implies authority, endorsement, or approval that has not been granted. In Meghan's case, authorities allege that the variation of the royal seal created the impression of royal backing, whether intentional or not. International law adds another layer of complexity. The contracts in question span multiple countries, each with distinct legal standards regarding trademarks, intellectual property, and misrepresentation. In some jurisdictions, using a symbol that closely resembles a protected emblem, like the royal seal, can be interpreted as a serious offense, carrying penalties ranging from fines to criminal liability. In others, the law may hinge on proving intent to deceive. This variability complicates any potential investigation and raises the possibility of cross-border legal implications. Legal analysts reviewing the leaked documents point to subtle but critical issues. The seal was not an exact replica, it was a variation. Yet even slight alterations do not necessarily absolve someone from liability. Many legal frameworks consider the effect of the symbol on the recipient. Did it convey authority, trust, or endorsement? If the answer is yes, then the modification may be insufficient as a defense. The question of intent becomes central. Did Meghan, or her team, knowingly create a symbol intended to mislead? Or was it used innocently, with the belief that a former duchess retains residual entitlement? Another critical aspect is the language within the contracts themselves. Legal experts note that some documents include ambiguous references to Meghan's former title or royal association. Even without explicit claims, the combination of language and the symbol can create an implied endorsement. In business law, implied authority carries significant weight. If a counterpart relies on the perception of endorsement to make financial or strategic decisions, and that perception is later proven false, liability can follow. This is precisely what investigators are examining in the current inquiries. Precedent provides context. Historically, misuse of royal symbols or government emblems has resulted in serious consequences. In one famous case in the 19th century, an entrepreneur used a coat of arms resembling the royal seal to promote overseas trade, resulting in criminal charges and diplomatic disputes. More recently, a private individual who implied royal backing in contracts faced legal action, with the court ruling that even indirect suggestion of authority constitutes unauthorized representation. These precedents demonstrate that the law takes the integrity of such symbols seriously. Intellectual property law also comes into play. Protected symbols, like the royal seal, are considered intellectual property of the monarchy or state. Unauthorized reproduction, even in modified form, can violate trademark and copyright protections. In Meghan's case, if the variation of the seal is deemed substantially similar, it could be argued that she infringed on the intellectual property rights of the monarchy. This is separate from misrepresentation but equally consequential, as it carries potential civil liability. The legal analysis extends to international contract law. If the royal seal, or a variation, affected the decisions of international partners, questions arise about enforceability, reliance, and potential rescission of contracts. Could a company argue that it entered into an agreement under a false impression of royal endorsement? Could damages be sought if financial commitments were influenced by perceived authority? The answers depend on jurisdiction, specific contract language, and evidence of how the seal was presented and perceived. Intent, as mentioned earlier, is a central issue. Legal experts note that intent can be difficult to prove, especially when ambiguity is deliberately maintained. Some documents and communications suggest that Meghan's team understood the power of the seal and its potential influence on counterparties. If so, the law could interpret that as knowledge of potential misrepresentation, strengthening claims of liability. Conversely, if internal communications indicate uncertainty or belief in entitlement, the legal argument shifts toward inadvertent misrepresentation. The fine line between these scenarios is where much of the legal drama lies. The stakes are not only financial, but reputational. Even if criminal liability is avoided, civil claims or regulatory scrutiny could have profound consequences. Businesses and individuals acting on the perception of royal backing may pursue legal remedies. Media scrutiny can amplify the damage to personal and professional reputation. In the modern era, perception and legality are intertwined, and public opinion often amplifies the consequences of even minor legal infractions. One aspect that adds intensity to this situation is the public figure status of Meghan Markle. Courts and investigators often consider the reach and influence of the person involved. A symbol used by an ordinary individual may not carry the same legal weight as when used by someone with international visibility and influence. The combination of celebrity, former royal status, and perceived authority amplifies both the impact and the scrutiny of any alleged misuse. Legal analysts also point out that the cross-border nature of the deals complicates enforcement. If investigations proceed, they may involve coordination between authorities in multiple countries, each with its own standards of evidence and legal thresholds. This could create a complex web of legal proceedings, drawing out investigations over months or even years. In such cases, the court of public opinion often operates faster than the courts themselves, creating additional pressure on all parties involved. Ethical considerations further complicate the legal landscape. Even if the law ultimately allows for plausible deniability, the ethical question remains: should a former member of the royal family leverage the symbolic authority of the monarchy in private business? Ethical scrutiny may not carry legal penalties, but it can amplify reputational damage, influence public perception, and affect the sustainability of future ventures. For someone like Meghan, whose brand is intertwined with public perception, this is a significant factor. The potential consequences are staggering. If authorities determine that unauthorized representation occurred, Meghan could face a combination of civil liability, regulatory fines, and reputational fallout. Even if no formal legal action is taken, the scrutiny itself can create challenges for ongoing and future business ventures. Partners may be hesitant to engage, investors may question credibility, and public trust could be eroded. Yet, amidst this complex legal landscape, one element stands out: the interplay between perception, symbolism, and law. A single emblem, even altered, has the power to influence decisions, shape outcomes, and create obligations. The law recognizes this influence, which is why unauthorized use of such symbols is treated seriously. For Meghan, the intersection of personal ambition, residual royal status, and strategic branding has created a situation fraught with legal, ethical, and reputational implications. And just when it seemed that the legal picture had been mapped, new evidence began to emerge: emails, memos, and correspondences suggesting that Meghan's team may have been aware of potential liability and discussed mitigation strategies internally. This revelation adds another layer to the story. If they were aware, did they proceed deliberately? Or were they confident that the modifications to the seal provided enough plausible deniability? The questions are now as compelling as the evidence itself. What comes next could redefine the entire narrative, and the decisions made in these legal corridors may have consequences that ripple far beyond the courtroom. The intersection of law, perception, and power is a volatile mix, and no one could predict just how high the stakes would climb. To understand the gravity of Meghan Markle's alleged actions, it is crucial to examine history. The misuse of royal symbols, seals, and emblems is not a modern phenomenon. Across centuries, monarchs have faced challenges from those who attempted to leverage symbols of authority for personal gain, financial advantage, or social influence. History shows us the consequences of such actions, and it also offers a lens through which to interpret the current allegations. Centuries ago, the royal seal was far more than decorative. It was a legal instrument with binding authority. Monarchs used it to endorse treaties, appoint officials, and grant privileges. Misuse of the seal was considered a direct affront to the crown and often met with severe punishment. In the 14th century, a merchant in England attempted to use a forged royal seal to secure trade agreements with foreign partners. He was apprehended, tried, and sentenced to a significant fine and public shaming. The message was clear: the royal seal could not be appropriated without consequences. Fast forward to the 18th and 19th centuries, when the Industrial Revolution expanded global trade. Entrepreneurs seeking to enhance credibility sometimes attempted to associate themselves with royal authority. One notable case involved a trading company claiming royal approval for overseas ventures. The documents bore a seal that was remarkably similar to the royal seal, though with slight modifications. When the deception was uncovered, the repercussions were severe: legal action, reputational damage, and in some cases, diplomatic intervention. These historical precedents underline a key principle: even subtle misuse of royal symbols has always been taken seriously. The 20th century saw similar controversies, albeit in a modernized context. During the mid-1900s, several businesses tried to capitalize on royal associations in marketing campaigns, promotional materials, and international contracts. In one famous case, a private company in Europe advertised products as royally endorsed, using symbols reminiscent of the monarchy. Investigations revealed that no such endorsement existed, resulting in lawsuits and financial penalties. Courts ruled that the implied use of royal authority, even if not explicitly claimed, constituted unauthorized representation. The principle was consistent: perception carries weight, and misleading use of symbols is actionable. These historical examples provide insight into the potential ramifications of the Meghan Markle case. While the context differs, modern media, international contracts, and a global celebrity, the underlying legal and cultural logic remains the same. The royal seal is protected for a reason. It represents legitimacy, authority, and trust. When someone outside the institution uses it, even indirectly, it raises legal, ethical, and reputational concerns. Interestingly, history also reveals the nuances of intent. In many cases, individuals argued that they did not intend to deceive, claiming ignorance of the seal's significance or asserting that minor modifications made it permissible. Courts have often rejected such defenses, emphasizing that the effect on recipients and the implied authority conveyed are more critical than subjective intent. This principle could play a central role in the current investigation, where Meghan's alleged use of a variation of the seal is scrutinized for its perceived impact on counterparties. There is also a diplomatic dimension in historical precedents. In some cases, misuse of royal symbols triggered not just legal consequences, but international tension. A merchant or entrepreneur implying royal backing could influence negotiations with foreign governments or multinational corporations, potentially creating diplomatic friction. In the 21st century, Meghan's alleged deals with international partners carry echoes of this historical risk. The royal seal is not just symbolic domestically, it has global resonance. Misuse, even implied, can have ramifications that extend far beyond financial transactions. The consequences in history were not always strictly legal. Reputational fallout often proved even more enduring. Individuals who misused royal symbols faced social ostracism, loss of credibility, and in some cases, professional ruin. The principle is clear: trust and legitimacy, once compromised, are difficult to restore. For Meghan, whose public persona is central to her ventures, reputational risk is a critical factor. Alleged misuse of the seal could undermine confidence among partners, investors, and the global audience that follows her every move.